Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Cabe. I am a graduate student at Syracuse University studying arts journalism, but I got my bachelor's degree in journalism from NIU, and I had Ms. Linguist as a high school English teacher. So she asked me to talk a little bit about citizen journalism from a journalist's perspective, some of the positives and negatives, and also at the end I want to tie it into how it relates to the justice system. So what is citizen journalism? It's basically the public playing an active role in either the gathering or the sharing of information in news. So this can take form in a lot of different ways. It can be something as simple as you're walking down the street, you see a house fire, so you snap a photo of it with your iPhone and you send it into a newspaper, and they run the photo in the paper along with the story. And it can be as simple as leaving comments on an online version of an article with, further tips for reporting or, pointing out holes in the story, asking questions. Or it can be something as major as WikiLeaks. I don't know, this was a pretty big deal, so you probably heard of it, but it's essentially where people, whistleblowers, can leak top secret documents onto the internet anonymously. So that's another form, a very drastic form of citizen journalism. But we don't see as much of that as we see the earlier examples, just regular people submitting content to news organizations. So there's a reason that this is a good thing. The media's purpose, main purpose has always been to serve the public interest, and the media can better do that if we know what the public interest is. So I'm in my own little world. I have my own interests. I know what I would like to read, but I can do a better job as a journalist if I know what my readers want from me. So having this more open, two-way dialogue-like relationship with the readers or the viewers or whatever kind of consumer is a good thing. We can do our jobs better as journalists by having more of an open relationship with the public. But there is also a negative side to this. Because of the internet and because of all these ways in which the public can contribute to journalism, there's increasingly a question of whether journalism is a valuable profession anymore, or if it's just something anybody can do thanks to a smartphone. And I'll be the first to admit, and any journalist will be the first to admit, that we don't really have a lot of fancy equipment on us at all times anymore. I have my smartphone where I have a voice recorder, so if I'm out reporting and I need an interview, I use the voice recorder on my phone. If I need a photo, I can pretty much get away with shooting an iPhone photo and it being acceptable in a pinch. So if that's the case, then a lot of people ask, why is journalism still a profession? Do we even need journalists when we have the internet and we have citizen reporters? And as a professional, trained journalist, I can say with a lot of confidence that yes, there is a reason that you have real trained journalists. There are a lot of legal and ethical dilemmas that journalists will run into, and the average person on the street isn't going to know about these things. The average person isn't necessarily going to understand libel law or slander or privacy laws. When can I take a picture of a stranger without their permission? It's just not general knowledge necessarily, and there are all kinds of First Amendment law that journalists are trained in that the average person is not. And also, ethics. Even if you can't really get sued for something, there are still things that journalists as a whole agree are right or wrong. For instance, we've pretty much all agreed not to name rape victims in our articles. We've agreed that the benefits do not outweigh the negatives in that situation. Whereas the average person might agree, might understand that, but they might not. And that's kind of dangerous, and we want to serve the public the best we can, and sometimes that means keeping certain information from public knowledge. So these are some of the negatives of citizen journalism, but as a whole, I would say the internet is actually improving journalism and helping journalists do their jobs better, as long as there is still a clear distinction between a citizen journalist and a professional journalist, and as long as there's an understanding that there is still a need for professional journalists. So how does all this relate to the justice system? Because I know that that's kind of the focus of the course. Social media plays a huge role in citizen journalism. So anyone can go on Twitter and tweet out news-like information. Same example, like there's a fire down the street. That is breaking news, essentially. But with the internet, sensationalism is a pretty big problem. And sometimes the most accurate version of a story isn't the most viewed version of the story. So when you have big, high-profile cases, like take the Trayvon Martin case, where it's very impassioned, very symbolic of a greater problem in America, there was a really big chance that George Zimmerman was not going to get a fair trial. And I don't want to get into all that necessarily because it doesn't directly relate to this, but I'm just using it as an example because I think that as a whole, the country was very passionately angry at what happened to Trayvon Martin. And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself, how is George Zimmerman going to get an unbiased jury when this story is everywhere? And the facts are very muddled, and people go into the trial already pretty much having an opinion and having made up their mind whether this man's innocent or not. The point is, with social media, this has always kind of been a problem. There have always been very high-profile cases for as long as there's been mass media. But the internet has only made it worse and more widespread, even more so than television. And then, the Boston bomber, before he even went to trial, we'd all pretty much decided, thanks to 24/7 coverage from CNN, that he was guilty. And there was no way that kid was going to get a fair trial. I'm not saying he was not guilty, but you have to ask yourself, when the media is constantly bombarding people through the internet with citizen journalism as well as through traditional means, when they're constantly bombarding people with a face and a name of a suspect, no matter what precautions they take with the use of their words, they can say allegedly all they want, they can say suspect all they want. If you're hearing that name and seeing that face constantly, there's a very good chance that you're going to make up in your mind that this person is not innocent. So that's just something to kind of think about. Think about the media's role in the justice system, what are the positives and negatives of having these 24-hour news cycles and the internet now, where everyone's opinion sort of gets spread around and turned into a version of the truth. And also, just think about citizen journalism in general, like I was talking about. Ask yourselves what the role of a traditional professional journalist is, and whether you think that is still a profession that needs to be around. Or if you think, because of the internet and because of everyone having a smartphone and because of all of this exchanging of ideas happening, if journalism as a profession is becoming obsolete. So I hope that you learned something, and I hope that what I've said has only brought more questions to your mind, because questions are good. As a journalist, of course, I think that. And I hope that you have a really good discussion out of this and come to some conclusions. And thank you for having me. Bye.